Have you checked out all the new handicappers at WagerTalk? If not, here's your chance. You can take 50% off your first daily or 3-day all-access purchase at WagerTalk using coupon code TRYWT. Our new roster of experts is 30 deep, covering sports from all around the world, giving you tons of options to choose from. All you have to do to redeem this offer is go to WagerTalk.com, choose a handicapper of your choice, and use coupon code TRYWT at checkout, saving 50% on your first purchase.
Happy Friday, everyone. Friday starts the weekend, and we are here to make your weekend a profitable one through the props betting market. Welcome, everyone, to Prop It Up. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com. Joining me, as always, each and every week, my fellow prop masters, Andrew McInnis from WagerTalk.com, Matt Josephs from SportsMemo.com. We have an interesting Thursday night football game to recap. We're going to go over quite a few NFL games, and then Andrew and I are going to give out some props for the massive UFC 280 event, which is tomorrow morning. Make sure you don't wait until Saturday evening to get those bets in. The fights will be well over, but we're going to get to that, and then we're going to get to our prop of the week, best bet, at the end of the show, gentlemen. Andy Dalton, prime time, reared its ugly head last night once more. So, Matt, what was your thoughts on that kind of crazy Cardinals and Saints game from last night?
Well, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins coming back, and that was pretty incredible to watch. I mean, remember, they had such good chemistry that first year, and then last year was a little bit of a down year for Hopkins in that offense. It was nice to be part of everyone else who was on the over of Juwan Johnson's receiving yards, and it hit, of course. I got it at 22.5. It went up to 25.5. Didn't matter because all the numbers went over. And for the second straight week, guys, and I'd love to debate this for just a moment. For the second straight week, I have a guy who I played a prop on who didn't play. AJ Green did not have a single snap yesterday. I was on his unders, unlike last week when I was on Bates' overs. So I'd love to bring this up to the panel, guys. I guess start with you, Andrew. So AJ Green, I have the under on his receiving yards. He was active last night, but didn't actually play. Should the books pay out his unders, or should it just be a no play? What's your thoughts?
Well, it just sounds to me like you have an inside man with these teams, Matt, because you're picking them. I mean, you know how to pick them. I think that it should be a win. It's not it's the same thing where, it's a lot of the times you look at a guy that gets injured. How often, besides the times that you've talked about where they do give you that insurance or wherever they'll the security, whatever, they give you the money back to try and have a good marketing thing. It's not our fault that a guy doesn't get targeted or a guy doesn't play snaps or a guy doesn't get out there. I think that it's different for each sport. I will say that in the prop betting market, Matt, and that's actually important to mention. Like for soccer, for example, if you take a guy to score a goal and they don't start in that game, that prop is actually turned into a void. But as far as football goes, I think you're clear, man. I think you're all good with that one. It shouldn't be an issue. So you must have been smiling watching that bet, though. And I just want to say, as far as the DeAndre Hopkins go, I look at that situation, and I was saying to some friends before the game started, he's either going to do nothing or have an incredible game. And obviously, Arizona was desperate to have someone like him back, and we saw right away how much they utilized him and went to him. And guys, I just want to say, as far as the Saints go, I've definitely. Just to update anybody on my INT prop status, I've definitely gotten over my fear of those INT props. Let's put it that way. I am not scared to bet those anymore, and it seems like I'm prime time. That seems like the time to be able to do it. So, Andy, I think last week you talked about INT props, and well, the numbers we get on them, even if they're really high sometimes, when they're throwing a hat trick of INTs, doesn't really matter if you laid some juice on them.
Matt, I'm with you. If they're active, I think that counts. I don't know. Who cares if they play one snap or not? If they're on the active roster, I think those props are well within plays. If you took an over, I think it should be a loss. If you took an under, I think it should be a win. I don't subscribe to this theory of, well, he got hurt early, and so therefore the bet should be voided. Despise that the books have opened up that can of worms. If he's on the active roster and he's standing there on the sidelines and he has a chance to play, that bet should absolutely 100% count. That should have been a win for you. But at least the books are clear. I will say that. At least they say you have to play at least one snap. So at least we do have some clarification on that. Of course, then the books can change their mind just whenever they feel like it. So why does it matter what they write?
Andy, as far as the soccer goes, imagine how mad you'd be. I know that we're talking football right now, but imagine how mad you'd be if you had a guy that you thought was going to be in the starting lineup to score a goal. He comes on in like the 80th minute and scores 2 goals. That happened to a player on, I think, Manchester City a couple weeks ago. And it seemed like everybody on gambling Twitter had this player to score a goal and the books voided because he didn't start. That I would be pissed. I'd be like, no, I want him just whenever, not when he starts or whatever. That's kind of a rough one. You have to start. So, because a lot of times these guys, the goal scorers, if you're having a rough game, if your team's not playing well, they'll send in some fresh legs in like the 85th minute. And those are the guys that probably usually score.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like we're not going to be able to play Andy Dalton interceptions much longer. It looks like Jameis is probably going to take over. That's the bad news. The good news, we get to play Jameis Winston interception props moving forward. Yay!
One door closes, another one opens.
By the way, Andy, if anybody played AJ Green overs last night, they deserve to lose. Like, let's be honest.
That's very, very true. Very, very true. All right, guys.
If that isn't a Matt comment, I don't know what it is. If that's not a Matt comment.
Matt, real quick, just we talked about some of these position players and some of these trends that get going on. Juwan Johnson was a very popular pick, but this just goes to the fading of the Arizona defense against tight ends, right? I mean, it's kind of the bet that keeps cashing.
Yeah, it was an automatic bet, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. And then last year, for some reason, they actually had a decent year against tight ends. But yeah, I mean, and then when you saw Adam Troutman was out, it made it just an obvious thing. And I was glad to get in. And you never want to take a worse number. And I know people were taking 25.5s last night. And as we said, it didn't really matter. But yeah, tight ends against the Cardinals, pretty much a guarantee. I was kind of sad because the Rodrigo Blankenship thing, they didn't put up any props on him till it was too late. And, of course, he had a couple field goals. Will Lutz had a couple field goals, kind of continuing the tradition of a ton of field goals on Thursday night.
We're going to get into some games here real quick. And after the games, I have a funny story to tell you about a bet I almost put in, and what a hilarious moment it would have been. I can't wait to get to that. Matt, coming right back to you, we're going to talk about the Commanders and the Packers. We've got interesting quarterback situations with Aaron Rodgers struggling. We've got Carson Wentz with the finger issue. Taylor Heineke is in. Break down the Commanders and the Packers. What do you see from a prop standpoint in this game?
Well, so my best bet is in this game for the show, so we'll get to that a little bit later. But I definitely think Taylor Heineke changes things a little bit. He is a different type quarterback than Carson Wentz, and I think he's going to be able to do some things against this Packers team. And talking to the Packers play-by-play guy this week on my show, I asked him if he thought Jair Alexander was going to shadow McLaurin, because Alexander had not been typically a shadower. He did shadow Garrett Wilson a lot last week in that game, and so Garrett Wilson's statistics were down a little bit. So I'll find that interesting, because Taylor Heineke loved Terry McLaurin last year. Like, Terry McLaurin put up some really good numbers with Heineke in the lineup, so it'll be fascinating to see if they do shadow him. Does that mean a guy like opposite him is Jahan Dotson going to do better because Jahan Dotson will be opposite him? I'm not playing any more Curtis Samuel props. He turned into Nelson Aguilar last week, and I can't deal with that anymore. Like, his numbers should have gone over. He dropped the touchdown. He dropped a couple passes, so I'm not interested there. And then, look, the backfield is becoming a bit clear here for the Commanders. I mean, it's Brian Robinson, who's going to be the 3-down guy. It's going to be Antonio Gibson, who kind of gets a few carries sprinkled in a little bit, but he becomes that guy that you want to throw some passes to and get into the open field. And then, obviously Andrew could speak on the Packers a little bit more too, but, they need to get the ball more to Aaron Jones. That was another thing that Wayne Larrivee told me. Like, they're trying to get the ball more to Jones, but it's just not there. And A.J. Dillon's another guy who should be getting the ball more. Like, they should be seeing the fact that they're not passing the ball very well, and they should get the ball more to the ground game. But the offensive line just hasn't been very good. Robert Tonyan had a really big game last week, but the tight ends have struggled a little bit against the Commanders, so I'll be interested to see who kind of steps up here. There are points to be had. Potentially, I think, Mason Crosby field goals could come into play here. Washington's one of those teams that gives up a lot of field goals here. So, look, I've wanted to pick the Commanders plus the points here. I can't do it anymore because, like, whenever you expect them to do what they're supposed to, they don't. This feels like potentially an Aaron Rodgers get-right game. But, of course, if he couldn't get right against the Jets, what makes you think he'll do it this week?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast. They were doing a fantastic job breaking down Aaron Jones. And coming into the season, we all thought, oh, this will be Aaron Jones receiving. And he's had like less receptions this year than any other year, less involvement in the passing game. It's really been just a mystery what's going on up there. Great stuff from Matt Josephs from sportsmemo.com. Matt has a promo code up. It's MATT7, MATT7. Get you 7 days for $59. Matt, what do you have for us this weekend? I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of college football, a lot of NFL, and probably some baseball, correct?
Yeah, 10-4 in the playoffs so far. I was looking to see if there's anything I like tonight. I might have a play up for tonight's Padres-Phillies game, but if not, 10-4 so far in the playoffs on a 30-20 run in NFL props, and, of course, the college football going well. Once again, those plays will start coming up this evening. So 7 days will be good because you'll get all that stuff that I'm doing really well in right now, and maybe an NBA prop or two sprinkled in. We'll see how that goes at sportsmemo.com.
Now you're talking. MATT7, MATT7 gets you 7 days for $59. Andrew, coming to you. Let's talk the Chargers and the Seahawks. Geno Smith, one of the pleasant surprises this year. The Chargers, maybe not so much one of the disappointments this year. Interesting matchup. We got a lot of big name guys in fantasy football and in the props world. What do you like from the Chargers and the Seahawks?
Yeah, I just want to say to Matt, I don't want to talk about the Packers, so I'm happy that you are. This is not something that I want to do, and I agree with you about the Aaron Jones situation, and they just keep trying to do things that aren't working for them. I feel like they think they have the team they had, 5 years ago. They got to change their offense. But anyway, look, as far as this game goes, I feel like I talk about a lot of overs, and so I wanted to talk about a couple unders, or at least one under with Geno Smith here. It's so interesting because I've loved kind of the drama and the comparison when you look at Geno Smith and obviously Russ Wilson leaving, and we've seen him perform better in his Subway commercials than we actually have on the field. But when you look at Geno Smith, his accuracy has been really good. His consistency has been really good. He's not throwing many interceptions, guys. But his pass attempts number has gone under in 7 of his last 8 games, which I thought was really interesting because it looks to me like they're playing it really safe with him. They're putting him in good positions to succeed. And this is a Seahawks team that I backed last week, and I just like the way that they're playing. They're running the ball at the right time. They're throwing the ball at the right time. Tyler Lockett, he's been playing pretty well as well. 4 of the last 6 games for him. He's gone over his receiving number. So I just, I wanted to point that out because I think that it's important to mention that quarterbacks can be, really on the top of their game, can be passing very accurately, can be at the top of the league in a lot of statistical categories, but not be up there in their pass attempts or even pass completions numbers. And I thought that was pretty cool to find out that, consistently, going back to last year, even he's actually gone under on his pass attempts quite often. And it doesn't mean you have to be that flashy. It doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback. They're just not utilizing him and not throwing the ball a bunch. But another guy I wanted to mention here with Austin Eckler, for him, really, he is 2 times in his last 6 games, he's gone over in his rushing yards. But you look at this Seahawks team, they rank 31st in the league in run defense. And this is a team, an opportunity here where trends can be your friend, and trends are an opportunity to look at a play and say, you know what, this guy's not playing well. We're going to continue to ride the wave. But to me, when I look at this one, the number you're getting with him right now on his rushing is only 2 yards different than what he's averaging on the season. And now you take him up against a Seahawks team that has really been an open door as far as rushing yards allowed. This could be the week that you see him have a good run game. So I like Austin Eckler this week to get it done on the ground. And just overall, looking at this game, I think there's lots of different opportunities, but it's kind of like you mentioned, Andy. I like the segue you gave me as far as fantasy game because, sometimes it's fun. Like last week I picked, kind of the Bills and Chiefs, and you can pick these games that should be fun and have some, long throws and things like that. But you can kind of nitpick, these unders and certain players to do certain things. And I kind of like that Eckler play just because it's a little bit contrarian and goes against what we've seen so far with him. But it's a guy struggling, a guy not hitting his over on running. but also up against a team that's pretty much dead last as far as rush defense. So a few plays I like in this game, but that Seahawks play with Geno Smith kind of caught me off guard with his pass attempts under Andy based on how well he's been playing.
Great stuff from Andrew McInnis at WagerTalk.com. Andrew has a 5% play up for the absolutely loaded UFC 280 card. You can use the promo code UFC 280. Get you a discount on Andrew's 5% play. Andrew, you've been doing really, really well in UFC and MMA. Don't ignore the UFC plays. Andrew and I have both done really good adding to bankrolls this year. It's been a really, really good year, and there's a lot of bettable, really gettable fights in this one. So go grab Andrew's 5% play. Andrew and I are going to talk about some of these UFC props in this event here a little bit later, and we've got our best bet coming up. I'm going to talk about the Jaguars and the Giants, maybe the biggest surprise this year in the NFL. I got to start with Trevor Lawrence, and I think he showed signs, especially in week 2, of looking really good, but now he's kind of regressing a little bit, and I'm not going to fault him for having a bad first half of the year because he's probably trying to shake off the Urban Meyer stench that he has been carrying around. It's probably going to take the first half of the season. But I got to look under. He was bad against the Colts and the Eagles. His passing total is 228.5. I'm looking under, and I'm very skeptical about this running game for Jacksonville. Travis Etienne has had some really bad drops. And at the same time, he's had really explosive moments. And I'm not really sure what to make of James Robinson. Matt and I professed James Robinson, huge fans of his, but he's just not really getting it done. I can't bet on any of these running backs. One guy I do like that I think you can take an over on for the Jaguars is Evan Ingram. His receiving total is 29.5. That is enticing. The Giants just gave up a massive game. They've given up receiving yards to touch. And that's played team tight end very much. Andrews is by far and away the best tight end that they faced, and he absolutely torched them. Ingram's gone over in 4 out of his last 6 games, including his last 2. So Christian Kirk he's seen his numbers drop, and Zay Jones, not really that happy with the number out there. But Evan Ingram, 29.5, as long as it stays under 30, I think is worth a look. If I'm looking at the Giants, obviously, Saquon is the big skill position. You don't need me to tell you want to look at Saquon overs. But I will tell you, don't overlook this Giants team total. It's 19.5. They've gone over this total 3 straight games. By hook or by crook, the offense is just kind of getting it done. I think they have the least amount of big plays in the league by far, but they're just getting it done, and this Jaguars defense is not as good the last few weeks. So as long as this total is under 20, I think that one is worth a look. And then Graham Gano did not go over his field goals. I've been playing him. But just because a play loses once, I'm not going to abandon it completely. The Giants had 3 red zone trips and got 3 touchdowns. I don't expect that conversion to continue. So as long as the books give me Graham Gano over 1.5 made field goals, I'll be back on that one again. Matt, coming to you. We got the Cowboys. We got the Lions. Looks like Dak Prescott is probably going to be back, and he gets the Lions defense. So we could be expecting a lot of points in this one. What do you think about the Cowboys and the Lions?
By the way, the Evan Ingram angle you didn't really touch on is it's a revenge game for Evan Ingram. He's going up against his former team that tragically underused him at times. So Evan Ingram, if he's ever going to get up for a game, it would be against his former team. Not that I think he ever gets up for any games, but so I really wanted to do the Eagles versus the bye this week because you guys know I only really know 2 teams, the Eagles and the Commanders. But obviously the Eagles can't lose this week, can't lose at all during the season. So I'll talk about the team that does lose during the regular season, the Dallas Cowboys. So we're getting Dak Prescott back, and it's really tough to kind of figure out what they're going to do, if they're going to give him the full playbook and everything, and if he's just going to go and act like he's been around for all season long. So this feels like, oh, God, it feels like an Ezekiel Elliott game. Like Ezekiel Elliott, anytime touchdown probably comes into play. I still like Tony Pollard. It's still hard to figure out when Tony Pollard's the receiver and when he's the running back, so you kind of protect yourself a little bit by taking the rushing and the receiving just in case he's one more than the other. You know he's going to do a little bit of both, but I feel like this is going to be a big-time running day for the Cowboys. The Lions' rush defense isn't very good. I think they're like 31st or 32nd, so I would say as much as you don't want to, to, I would look at Elliott touchdowns and maybe Pollard rushing and receiving. And then on the other end, look, I think this is a Lions team total under. I mean, I think Dallas got somewhat a little bit embarrassed last week by how they played in terms of, the defense. They played very well, but now you've got a home game against a team that you should be able to dominate. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown probably struggles a little bit, although we know Trevon Diggs, the most overrated corner in the league, if he gives up yards, he might get a pick in this game. Jared Goff interception could come into play here. Dallas is the type of defense that's very ball hawking. They're going to go and get themselves a pick. I don't know what to do about the backfield. DeAndre Swift, maybe Jamal Williams. Who knows who's going to be available for this one? But I think the Lions struggle to score here. I think a team total under for the Lions comes into play, and I think it's a Dallas running game situation, unfortunately. So you might have to back Zeke and hope you get a lot of this as he gets a lot of first downs in this one.
Any thoughts on Jamal Williams? Anytime touchdown, Matt? He's been just a surprise touchdown machine. Do you think he's going to regress back to, his touchdown rate is, you would think it's unsustainable, but he sure seems like he's the running back inside the 5-yard line. Do you think we keep playing that one?
I mean, I think you do. Obviously, it depends on the price, and obviously shop around to the different books and things like that. But I just, I don't know how many touchdowns the Lions are going to score. I think they're going to get – basically, Andy, I'm thinking they're going to get 2 because if I'm taking it, I'm pretty sure their team total is like 17.5. If you're taking the under, so you think there's 2 touchdowns that are going to happen here. So you're basically hoping that one of those 2 touchdowns is in the red zone and down by the 5. I think he has a shot there, but then again, some of it could be a product of DeAndre Swift's health. So, yeah, if you're picking anybody, it would probably be him as the best value there for the anytime touchdowns for the Lions.
Great stuff from Matt Joseph, sportsmemo.com. Andrew, coming to you. Bengals and the Falcons. Falcons, another surprise team. They're running that crazy offense that teams just can't seem to figure out. Marcus Mariota is getting it done despite the fact he's not throwing it very much. What do you like in this game for the Bengals and the Falcons?
Oh, Andy, I always like your segues. It almost is like we had a script planned, but we actually didn't for this. But that him not throwing the ball is definitely some targets I have for props this weekend. But I just want to say, we believe in full transparency with our client plays and making sure people know if we're hot or cold. I want to let people know that, hey, I crapped all over this Falcons team in the preseason on Prop It Up. And whether they're winning games straight up or they're covering the spread, they're playing better than I thought they were going to. And I just want to say that because I might as well announce that I was pretty wrong about this team. They've shown a lot more heart than I thought they would. But the funny thing is, like Andy just said, I don't think Marcus Mariota is really being the make or break X factor of this team, seeing as in their last 5 games, he's gone under on both the completions and pass attempts. So I don't know if he's really being the guy for them, but I feel like that's still a look for me in this game as well, taking a look at the under on Mariota's completions. When I look at this Falcons team, you got to look at their defense. Last game they're coming off, they literally had 2 interceptions. They had 3 guys with at least 50 rushing yards. They're getting it done in, the areas that, don't always stick out, right? And they're getting it done with a big group of people. It's not like it's just 1 or 2 guys that are getting, doing the bulk of the work, which is when you start to look at unders. And that's kind of what I look at towards this team right now. Even with Cordero Patterson, I'm looking towards his under on receiving yards. I mean, I don't think they're getting the ball to him very much. You look at this entire offense, they're spreading it out. You look at their box score, a lot of guys are getting involved for them, but not a lot of guys are really going crazy or anything like that. So with this Falcons team, I'm not saying I expect regression as far as them against the spread maybe, but I'm expecting them to just continue to diversify their offense, not really have 1 or 2 guys getting the ball a lot. But guys, I'm getting back to these completion props, and I used to only really bet the overs on these. It's time for me to start betting some of these unders, and Marcus Mariota and the Falcons, I'm going to start jumping on these unders as far as completions and maybe the attempts as well. We used to talk on the show about receptions or receiving yards. Well, my debate right now these days is completions or attempts. What do I want to look at? And I guess it's different for each game, but I think it's something worth discussing for us. But I wanted to talk about Joe Mixon. Over on receptions, 7 of his last 8 games. Yards after catch has been huge for him. He can catch a 4-yard toss and turn it into something big. I think the Falcons defense will get exposed and run all over by him. So he's a play I really like. And the same way I said this last week about one of the games I had talked about, I do have a few more client props going up in this game. So check it out at WagerTalk.com. I love kind of narrowing in on one or two games and kind of loading up a little bit. So I will not have a side or total play in this game. However, I will have a decent amount of prop plays for it. So looking forward to it, Andy.
Good stuff. Andrew McInnis at WagerTalk.com. I'm going to break down the Titans and the Colts. I got to give out a promo code for myself for NBA. You can use the promo code LANG200, LANG 200, for $200 off a season of NBA props. Start off 4-1 to start off the season. So we're off to a great start. Have a great read on a lot of the teams and a lot of the players. We were up over 82 units last regular season in NBA. So excited to have everyone on board with that. Grab it at wagertalk.com. LANG200 is the promo code. Of course, I have to talk about the Titans and the Colts. I'm going to start with how terrible the Titans secondary is. And I've heard this, well, they can get pressure on the quarterback. It's like, well, that's great, but the quarterback will just throw it to the wide open wide receivers running down the field. The Titans, they give up just a ton of passing yards, 4 straight games of over 300-yard passing quarterbacks. And I know they're coming off a bye, but unless they picked up a bunch of really good cornerbacks, I don't think it's going to change much in that secondary. Matt Ryan's total is 252.5. Matt Ryan has thrown for 300-plus in 2 out of his last 3 games, and the one game he did not throw for 300 yards was against Denver, an elite pass defense. I think this number is way too low. I know they're getting Jonathan Taylor back. I don't expect that to affect Matt Ryan's numbers. He torched this team a few weeks ago with Jonathan Taylor, and if anything, it's just going to help the offense move a little bit more. And if you're going to take Matt Ryan to throw over, you've got to look at Alec Pierce, over 43.5 yards receiving. I will say, people love Alec Pierce here in Indianapolis. He's like the new shiny toy. Like, oh, who's this guy? We've had enough of Paris Campbell, and we love Michael Pittman, but he's drawing the most defense in. Pierce is taking advantage of some of those situations where he's one-on-one. A lot of his yards came late last week, but 43.5 seems a little bit low, especially if you're a believer in me that Matt Ryan's going to have a field day. And then finally, it's chalky, it's squarish, but off a bye week, Derrick Henry should be fresh and ready to go. They've got this total of 89.5 rushing yards. I'm taking the over on Derrick Henry against the Colts if it's below 100. He went for 114 against the Colts a few weeks ago. It's just been a really good bet, Derrick Henry to run all over the Colts. His defense is overrated. I talked about how bad the secondary is, but Tennessee doesn't need to attack the secondary. They can do it with Derrick Henry. So I'm looking at Matt Ryan, Alec Pierce, and Derrick Henry to be some big-time overs in this one. All right, that is going to do it for our NFL breakdowns. Matt, you are going to talk to us about the longest reception. Is it longest reception or longest throw? I'm sorry.
Longest completion.
Longest completions. All right. So you've taken this very specific category. What do you notice about longest completions, and how do you research this one? It seems a little bit difficult, but you've obviously found a niche in this one.
Well, I mean, it's something that I've kind of played mostly because watching the Eagles defense is built not to give up the long pass. And last week, one of the bets that we hit on, it was Sunday Night Football when the Eagles played the Cowboys, was the under on Cooper Rush's longest completion, because the Eagles defense is basically built to not give up completions over 30 yards. They've only given up like 2 of them, and they were on broken plays this season. And then, last night, one of the plays that I lost on was the under on Andy Dalton's longest completion, because the Cardinals had not given up a pass over 35 yards to anybody this season. And so, of course, some guy named Shaheed, who I'd never heard of, and then some practice squad guy named White, both went over that number. So I was like, all right. I mean, this is the frustrating thing about the bet. You could have it handicapped perfectly, and for 4 quarters, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden there's one pass play, and it breaks for a touchdown or whatever, and you lose. Last night was the opposite. It was like the first or second pass play of the game, and it lost. And that's the frustrating nature of this thing. But you can at least find the teams, because there's some secondaries and there's some defenses who play back. And, what they do is they don't allow the deep passes, whereas some of the other secondaries, like Andy, I can't imagine your Colts secondary, like they give up, it feels like, deep passes all the time. The Commanders often have secondary breakdowns. and that leads to long passes. So really, it's just kind of going back through the box scores for some of these things and looking at some of the longest completions for some of these quarterbacks. You look at a guy like, Andy Dalton, for the most part, doesn't throw the ball deep. And so, that's another reason why I like to play last night. Cooper Rush doesn't have a big arm. There are some quarterbacks who just don't have big arms and would rather just move down the field methodically. So really what you do is just kind of go over the box scores. You see who the guys are who are going over the numbers, whether it is a tight end, whether it is a running back. Is it a team that struggles against defending the running backs like the Chiefs, who are the worst team in the league when it comes to defense against running back receptions and stuff like that. So really just kind of go over the box scores early in the season, look at the quarterback, look at who he's got. Like last night I was like, all right, my only person I'm worried about is Chris Olave because he's their deep threat. And of course, as I said, he was like the one who didn't go over the number. So really, there is some value on playing unders on longest completions here. It's a wild ride when you watch the game and you're always sitting there saying, hopefully the guy gets tackled. But there are some teams in this league that are built to not allow the deep ball. The Eagles and the Cardinals, for the most part, are the two that I've kind of looked at the most. So it's another market here that people don't really look at. And the other thing, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, is if you look at the receivers and their longest completions, longest receptions, none of them match up numerically to the longest completion, which I find rather interesting. Usually you'll have like about an 8 or 9 yard difference. So you could, in theory, hit a longest reception over on a guy like Justin Jefferson, but you can hit a longest completion under on Kirk Cousins because of that little difference there. So it's just another market that people probably don't look at as much, but there are some teams built to prevent the long completions, and the Eagles and the Cardinals are two of them for the most part.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Just a ton of information to know for some of these NFL props. There's so many categories. Great job breaking down the longest completion, Matt. Andrew, let's talk a little UFC 280 real quick, and then we'll get into our best bet. We can go briefly NHL and NBA. Super loaded card. We lost one at weigh-ins, unfortunately. The Almeida fight is off. What do you like in UFC 280? What are some props that have your attention?
Man, I can't wait, Andy. This is going to be so much fun. And like you said, everybody out there watching this right now, don't go sit on your couch at 6, 7, 8 o'clock and think you're going to watch some UFC tomorrow night. It'll be long done. So make sure you're grabbing plays and locking in bets early. Well, Andy, one I'll start with a little bit early here, and I'll throw it back to you and go back and forth a little bit. I'm curious to see your reaction by this one. Sugar Sean O'Malley to win via points plus 500. Everyone he's talking about, I'm going to knock him out, and Pierre Dionne is so durable to me, and this matchup, I think if Sugar Sean has a chance in sticking around here and actually competing, I think it's going to be because of his length, keeping distance, piecing him up, picking him apart. He's not going to want to get too aggressive. He's talked about his grapple game. We've talked about his wrestling and what would happen if those two guys got on the mat, but at plus 500, we're talking value here. We're talking a great price. And I think that, everyone's talking about how knockout and an early finish is the only way that Sean O'Malley could finish him. The fact of the matter is what the noise is right now about him only facing scrubs so far, it could be true. So that's why I think that, him playing smart, coming in with a good game plan, as much as you want to read into the hype, Andy, with this, and we've seen what Jan can do. I mean, first of all, his combos are insane. I mean, he doesn't even throw like 1, 2, 3s, 1, 2. He throws like minute-long combos, it feels like. But he also is a very smart fighter as well. So I think that fight actually could go the distance. And I think getting O'Malley at plus 500 is a pretty good price there. So I want to get your thoughts on that because I thought that was a pretty intriguing wager to make.
I'm going to surprise you with this. I agree. More than you think. I did a segment talking about taking this fight via split decision is plus 450. Petr Yan, his last 4 fights, he has been down going into round 3 or it's been 1-1. He starts slow. He downloads information on his opponent. But those were 5-round fights. This is a 3-round fight. He can't get off to that slow start. Mm-hmm. And O'Malley has got those long jabs and those long kicks. It would not surprise me if O'Malley takes the first round and then Jan takes, another round, and then it comes down to round 3. So I'm with you on the points. And if you're Jan, you do not want to be in a situation where you don't know if you won the fight outright. I mean, right. Jan really has to make every shot count because, Andrew, and you know this, every time Sean O'Malley throws a punch that even looks like it connects, the crowd goes nuts. And the judge is like, whoa, that must have hit pretty hard. like it really.
Do you
really
think it's important though that he keeps his distance though and doesn't try and if he cracks a good one on Jan, does he move in and try and start going crazy, or do you think it's because I think that's the thing, he's gonna kind of be bobbing and weaving and jumping around and kind of just like you said, using that jab he has.
He's got really good front kicks if he wants to use them. He's got to use those, and he's got to use the jabs. He cannot let Jan get inside. I'll throw one at you. I am stunned by the disrespect and the odds that Charles Oliveira gets, and he's plus 300 to win by submission. He looks dialed in. And, Andrew, has there been a better bet over the years than Charles Oliveira as an underdog? I don't understand why this guy keeps being an underdog. Makhachev has fought nobody. Nobody. Like 3 of his fights have been short notice replacement fighters. He fought Bobby Green on short notice. Bobby Green's now suspended for violate. Like Makhachev has not fought anybody like Charles Oliveira. And Andrew, if you've seen any of the press conferences of the weigh-ins, I've never seen Oliveira this intense going into a fight. Yeah. He's going in to absolutely rip somebody's head off. And Makhachev is going to, we all know his wrestling game. He's going to go for the takedowns, and he's going to want to be on top, and that is Oliveira's world. Oliveira pulls guard and wants to be on the bottom to work submissions. Makhachev has not seen anything like Oliveira. You can practice all you want. You can bring in Olympic wrestlers, which Makhachev has done, but until you've had Oliveira wrap you up in a triangle or an arm bar or something, he could rip a submission so quick, and to get it at plus 300, I think, is a steal. I don't know what your thoughts are on the main event.
Hey, you're more brave than me because I was just thinking inside the distance. So I'm on the same page as you with that. And, I think that, I'm not, we're not disrespecting Makhachev. I think we're just putting respect down on Oliveira and thinking he's being disrespected here with that. And I love the fact that you mentioned that he has no problem. I mean, we saw in the fight against Justin Gaethje, he literally would get knocked down even a little bit. And then he would be like, hey, come on, join me down here. Come on. And I don't think that he's worried about what Islam has to do down there, but also what has, not even, we could sit here all day and just pick apart and make fun of, the strength of, I guess what we'd say in other sports, strength of schedule, but strength of, previous fights or weakness. We could do that all day about Islam, but how many times has he gone on the ground with somebody who's been able to do what Charles Oliveira is going to be able to do back to him, or be able to kind of give him a hard time? That's the way I really look at it. Not very often, right? So
yeah, 0.
But I think there's no question that would you say just overall total rounds in this fight you'd go under? Because someone's they're smart.
Oliveira can rip a submission at any time. Could be in the last round, could be in the first round. When you're dealing with a submission guy, you just never know when it's coming. Could be quick on an overzealous attack from Makhachev, or it could be because he wears him down in round 5. So we're running up against the clock here, Andrew. So give me 30 seconds on NHL props. I'll do 30 seconds on NBA props early in the season, and then we'll get to the best bet. 30 seconds, NHL props. Go.
30 seconds. Look, don't overthink it right now, guys, because early in the season, it seems like that the star players are being the star players. That same thing as I'm telling people as far as, things that are kind of had to settle out. These players that are playing well right now, the top players, the depth players start to come out in about a month or two. So if you like Austin Matthews, if you like David Pasternak, if you like, Jack Eichel, now is the time to bet these favorites to score goals, get shots on goal. In a few weeks, we'll come on and I'll throw names at you that you've never even heard of for a prop bet. So right now, bet on the guys you like, bet on the guys that are really favorites because they're the ones that are doing the scoring right now, I've noticed.
Yeah, great job. Also, don't shy away from unders. There's some guys that are just not getting close to their shots on goal. 30 seconds on NBA. The Pacers did a masterful job of figuring out a way to get Miles Turner out of their lineup. So full speed ahead on the tank mode for the Pacers. Go ahead and take team totals on Pacers opponents over, as well as guards over. The Nets look like an absolute mess. I'm taking Ben Simmons unders. Chris Paul looks like he could be in store for a very, very low scoring year. He doesn't look 100%. His points tonight are 13.5. I would be looking at those and monitoring that situation. All right, it is time for the best bet. We are going to Matt Josephs Matt, what do you like for our best bet today?
Ben Simmons, what a loser. All right, we're gonna try and we're gonna play a prop was very frustrating last year. So I'm hoping that things were like what it was at the start of the year last year and not the end of the year last year. I'm going over 13.5 rushing yards for Taylor Heineke in this one. The frustrating thing for Taylor Heineke last year was the beginning of the season, he went nuts. He ran all over the place, went over this thing, never was very afraid of running. And then it seemed to be like some sort of coaching decision where they didn't want him to run at all. And starting with like the Seattle Monday Night Football game, he barely ran and would not have gone over this number. So it's a bit of a worry here, but one of his best rushing efforts was against the Green Bay Packers. 10 rushes for like 90 yards last year. His mobility is what's going to help this team. Their offensive line is worse this year than it was last year. Justin Fields went over this number and Daniel Jones went over this number. Two mobile guys. Granted, they didn't fly over this number, but they both went over. And so I'm going to take a shot that Taylor Heineke basically got the okay to run the ball a little bit here. Just get out of bounds, just slide, whatever. They're probably not going to take knees at the end because they're probably not going to win this game. So give me over 13.5 rushing yards for Taylor Heineke against the Green Bay Packers. Hopefully their pass rush gets enough that he has to get out of the pocket and run and go over this number.
Great stuff. Taylor Heineke over 13.5 rushing yards, our prop of the week. Go grab Matt Joseph's 7-day pack. Use the promo code MATT7, MATT7. Get you 7 days for $59. Andrew has a awesome 5% play up for UFC 280. You can use the promo code UFC 280 to get $25 off the 5% play. And for myself, you can use the promo code LANG200 to get $200 off a season of NBA plays. That includes all the props. So, guys, should be an action-packed and profitable weekend. Look forward to seeing you guys next week after we cash all of our tickets. Good luck. Hope everyone has a great, profitable weekend, and we will see everyone next week on Prop It Up.
Have you checked out all the new handicappers at WagerTalk? If not, here's your chance. You can take 50% off your first daily or 3-day all-access purchase at WagerTalk using coupon code TRYWT. Our new roster of experts is 30 deep, covering sports from all around the world, giving you tons of options to choose from. All you have to do to redeem this offer is go to WagerTalk.com, choose a handicapper of your choice, and use coupon code TRYWT at checkout, saving 50% on your first purchase.